The story begins with a woman who survived a horrific accident. Her body bore deep wounds and one of her hands was completely injured. Somehow she managed to inform the police. The police immediately sprang into action and shot down the suspect based on the clues she provided. Meanwhile, in another corner of the world, a happy family was welcoming their newborn. This was John and Sarah, who were overjoyed with the birth of their first child. They named their son Miles. However, they had no idea that an unknown power was born with their son. As time passed, strange things began to happen with Miles. At just 5 months old, he started speaking. Unlike other babies, he didn't cry while getting vaccinated. By the age of 3, he could solve complex puzzles on his own. Sarah was convinced that her son was a genius and thought of sending him to school as soon as possible. However, due to his young age, it wasn't allowed. When Miles was 5, an IQ test revealed shocking results. He was many times more intelligent than other children of his age. Sarah was proud of her son, but she didn't realize that Miles's behavior was also changing. He became extremely quiet and preferred to stay alone. His emotions gradually faded. At the age of 8 one day, John and Sarah went out for some work, leaving Miles under the care of a nanny named Joy. To pass the time, Joy played hide-and-seek with Miles, but as soon as she closed her eyes and started counting, strange things began to happen. Miles' shadow started growing longer and darker. Suddenly, the basement lights fused on their own. When Joe tried to find Miles, she heard strange noises coming from below. Fearfully, she descended into the basement, but due to the darkness, she couldn't see anything. Just then, a piece of glass came under her foot, causing her to fall and scream loudly. At night, Sarah suddenly woke up from her sleep. She heard strange sounds coming from her son's room. When she went to check, she found Miles speaking in a strange, unfamiliar language in his sleep, which she couldn't understand. Out of fear, she couldn't muster the courage to wake him up. She picked up a camera and recorded the words he was speaking. After a while, Miles woke up on his own. Sarah asked, "Did you have a bad dream?" But Miles smiled and replied, "No, Mommy, it was a beautiful dream." Hearing this, Sarah was stunned. She had no idea that this was the beginning of the greatest fear of her life. The next day at school, Miles asked a girlfriend to join him in an art project, but another boy interrupted and convinced the girl to refuse. Miles said nothing and quietly left the classroom. When he returned, he was holding a heavy wrench. Without saying a word, he attacked the boy. Chaos erupted in the school. When Sarah heard the news, she panicked and immediately took Miles to a psychiatrist. When Dr. Strauss asked, "Miles, why did you hurt your friend?" Miles replied with a sad face, "If I hadn't killed him, he would have killed me." Sarah and the doctor were shocked to hear this. Everything was strange and terrifying. When the doctor studied Miles' condition, he suspected that Miles might have been a victim of some mental or physical abuse. He asked Sarah about this, but Sarah herself was shocked by the question. She couldn't understand why the doctor was saying such things. Upon returning home, Sarah told John about it. It turned out that when John was a child, his father used to beat him a lot. Sarah suspected that John might be doing something similar to Miles. However, John completely denied the accusation. This led to an argument between the two, and in anger, John left the house. Meanwhile, Sarah went to check on Miles in his room, but as soon as she approached him, Miles suddenly woke up in fear. He was extremely terrified and kept pointing towards his head. Sarah thought it might be due to a bad dream and tried to calm him down. However, the next morning, Sarah received a call from the doctor. She thought it might be some new information about Miles' condition, so she rushed to the hospital. The doctor introduced her to a psychologist, Dr. Arthur, who was researching reincarnation and the influence of spirits. He analyzed a video recorded while Miles was sleeping. Sarah was shocked when the doctor revealed that the language Miles was speaking was a rare, almost extinct language that very few people knew. But the strangest part was that the language consisted only of curses and violent words, something unimaginable coming from a normal child. Dr. Arthur explained that Miles' symptoms indicated that another soul was inside him, and that this spirit could be very dangerous. Hearing this, Sarah became furious, thinking the doctor was talking nonsense, and stormed out of the room. Returning home, she told John everything. John found it unbelievable. That same night, when he went to put Miles to sleep, strange things started happening in the house. Suddenly, their pet dog began barking loudly without any reason. Sarah tried to calm it down, but when she looked at Miles again, she shivered in fear. For a few seconds, she saw the face of a strange man on Miles' face. Trembling, Sarah went closer to look at Miles carefully. but everything seemed normal. She thought it was just her exhaustion and ignored it. However, that same night, when the entire house was asleep, Miles quietly got up and went to the storeroom. There, he picked up a sharp knife and slowly began sharpening it. The next morning, John noticed that their dog was missing. He took Miles in the car to search for the dog. When John asked Miles when he last saw the dog, Miles smiled and said, "He will never come back now." Hearing this, John was shaken to the core. After returning home, John angrily asked Sarah if she had told Miles anything about the dog. Sarah denied it. Meanwhile, John's eyes fell on an old photo kept in a corner. When he picked up the photo, he found a small camera hidden behind it. He realized that Miles had not only been watching them, but was also keeping an eye on everything happening in the house. John was now convinced that something was seriously wrong. In a fit of anger, he stormed into Miles's room and confronted him. But before John could do anything, Sarah stopped him. Furious, John left the house, thinking he would deal with this later. That night, when Sarah was in deep sleep, she suddenly woke up to a strange sound. She got up and walked toward the door, only to find a swarm of flies covering the entire door. Torn between fear and curiosity, she followed the swarm down to the basement. What she saw there made the ground beneath her feet slip away. A large stream of blood was splattered across the basement floor. Trembling, she turned her eyes and saw blood oozing from an old trunk. With trembling hands, she opened the trunk, and what she saw made her scream. Her pet dog was lying dead inside. Miles didn't make any excuses. He broke down and cried, saying, "Mom, I did it, but I didn't do it intentionally. Sometimes my body doesn't remain under my control." At that moment, Sarah began to believe Dr. Arthur's words. She hugged Miles and said, "Don't worry." The next morning, she took Miles to Dr. Arthur again. The doctor was stunned to see them. He decided to hypnotize Miles to awaken the spirit that possessed him and find out what it really wanted. As soon as the hypnosis began, strange changes started occurring in Miles' body. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and his voice became deep and terrifying. He threatened the doctor, "If you try to be too clever, you will meet the same fate as the others." Out of fear, the doctor immediately stopped the hypnosis and lied to Sarah, saying that Miles was completely normal. Sarah was suspicious of the doctor's words but quietly left the place. Dr. Arthur was now terrified, but when he looked closely near the sofa, he saw deep claw marks on the floor. It was a sign. Perhaps the real name of the spirit possessing Miles was hidden there. The doctor searched for the name online, and the information that came to light shocked them. They immediately called Sarah and said, "Keep Miles away from you right now." A terrified Sarah sat in front of the computer, and as soon as she searched, her eyes widened in shock. The man in the picture was the same person the police had shot dead a few years ago. This man was a notorious serial killer named Edward, who had murdered 9 women within 5 years. His method was horrific. He would first cut the victim's palm and then kill them. Sarah now understood that the spirit of that man had possessed Miles, and he had returned for only one purpose: to finish his last victim. At that moment, a loud noise came from upstairs. Sarah fearfully looked up and saw John H. standing there. When John heard everything from Sarah, they decided that Miles needed to be sent to a correctional facility. The next day, John took Miles in the car and headed toward a correctional facility outside the city. After driving a little distance, Miles suspected that the road was not leading to his school. He asked John, "Dad, where are we going?" John replied, "Where you belong." But John had no idea that stopping Miles wouldn't be that easy. Suddenly, Miles' seatbelt unbuckled on its own. When John looked back, Miles was holding a sharp knife. Before John could react, Miles stabbed the knife into his waist. Writhing in pain, John lost control of the steering wheel, and the car crashed into a large tree at high speed. When Sarah reached the hospital, she was informed that John had slipped into a coma. The doctors said that even if he survived, he might be paralyzed for life. Tears filled Sarah's eyes, but now she had risen above fear. She had made up her mind. She had to stop her son at any cost, even if it meant going to extreme lengths. Sarah bought a gun and decided to find the woman whom the spirit wanted to kill. She believed that if the woman died, the spirit would leave Miles' body. After several attempts, Sarah reached the woman's house, knocked on the door, and when the woman opened it, Sarah said softly, "I need to talk to you about something important." Since Sarah was also a woman, the other woman didn't suspect her and invited her inside. During the conversation, Sarah learned that the woman also had a son. Hearing this awakened Sarah's maternal instincts, and she realized she couldn't commit such a sin. But before anyone could understand how and when Miles arrived there, he suddenly appeared. His eyes glowed strangely, just like the killer whose spirit had possessed him. Before the woman could react, Miles pulled out a knife and stabbed her. Sarah tried to stop him, but the woman had already fallen to the ground. Sarah's heart sank. She had hoped that the spirit would leave after the woman's death, but when she looked into Miles' eyes, she realized the game wasn't over yet. Miles turned toward Sarah and smiled eerily. His voice had completely changed as he said, "Mom, it's too late now." At that moment, Sarah understood that the spirit would never leave Miles' body because Miles had already died long ago. Sarah trembled with fear. The child she had been living with for so long was nothing but a lie. The killer was merely using Miles' body to fulfill his revenge. Pushing aside all her fears, Sarah pulled out her gun and aimed it at Miles. The gunshots echoed, but Miles kept laughing. Sarah felt a strange pain in her body and saw herself falling to the ground covered in blood. An old man standing behind her had shot her. Miles, crying, went to the old man and innocently said, "She wanted to kill me." The old man believed that Sarah was the real killer. Sarah lay on the ground, groaning in pain, but she had no strength left to speak. Darkness clouded her vision, and eventually she died. In the final scene, a new couple adopts Miles. No one could even imagine that inside this innocent-looking child lies the soul of a ruthless killer. In the last scene, when the new mother lovingly picks him up in her arms, Miles gives a slight smile, and the movie ends. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Also subscribe to this channel for more horror stories like this.